Hey, how you guys doing? So this is Neil from masterpaintnow.com bringing you another free art lesson. I'm one of the top art instructors on Udemy with over 30,000 happy students, all growing and learning. So grow with us. All right, let's get started. All right, so hey, how you guys doing? I'm gonna do something a little differently in this one. This will be the painting that we're gonna do. And here's the reference that it comes from. I'm gonna talk about how to paint from reference, but having fun doing it. That is, you're not just being a photocopier, how to turn a photo reference into an actual piece of art. That's not to say that if I were just to copy this exactly, every little nook and cranny, which is super boring to me now. I used to do that when I was younger, and it got really boring to me. And the reason I wanted to share this is because this allows me to get inspired by a photo and paint from a photo, but still feel like I'm painting from imagination, which is the most awesome feeling ever. Really quickly before we get into that, also I'm going to do something different. Instead of just having a speed painting going, I'm going to control it at my own speed here and go through it, and then I'll play some parts in real time here so you can just see little things as I'm talking about how I do this, and we're going to go through the whole thing here. Boom, and then have the end result. Now this is done in Painter, not Painter, excuse me, PaintStorm. Awesome program for painting. I think I used my Bob Ross brushes, and I think at some point I used my own brushes as well. Let me see if I ever click. Yeah, there's a couple times I click on my oil brush. I actually been developing some of my own paint brushes as well for this program for doing different kinds of painting, like painting the woman. Anyway, so here's the main thing. Notice the differences. Right away, I'm going to share what kind of went through my head, and then we'll go through the painting just really quickly here. But when I paint from a photo, I'm not trying to replicate it. When I was just searching through photos for reference of someone waving for a different painting, and I wanted to just get some ideas about a guy waving. And this came up, and I don't know why, something about it just captured my attention. I figured, you know what? If something about this painting or this photograph captured me, then if I did a representation of it in a painting, that would probably also capture somebody else. That is, it'd probably be a moving painting. And I can't really tell you what about it exactly captures me. I really can't. It's a flat painting. That is, there's not. I mean, there's a lot of perspective in the wheat. Wheat fields to me are boring. I've never in my life until this painting painted a wheat field before. Never even thought I wanted to paint wheat because it's pretty boring looking. But something about it. I mean, there's a lot of perspective here in the wheat field, and but the trees, they're just flat. I mean, yeah, they're different sizes, which adds interest to it. But they're flat. Nothing. There's not depth really to the painting. There's not much depth to it. And by that I mean, like, when I do my landscape paintings, there's a lot of depth to it. I have things overlapping each other and things going in the background, and it looks really cool. This is quite a plain photograph, but something about it captured my attention, so I wanted to paint it. But I knew right away that I wanted it to be up closer on her. I didn't want it to be as wide of a shot. I wanted to be closer on her. She's the main topic of the painting, the main subject. And yeah, so you can see I didn't paint it exactly what I saw. In fact, the clouds aren't even where they are in the painting. It's just an inspiration, right? And I'm not going for super realism. I'm going for that painterly style. So I kind of I paint things that resemble, I guess, wheat. And we'll go through that now. And then the other thing is, I'm like, why is she just waving at the sky? That doesn't tell a story. And so I put an airplane in the sky, and it's like taking off. And to me, I'm going to talk about colors and stuff like that in this video as well. And like when you're capturing from a photograph, how do you do that? How do you make it look painterly? Anyway, so I figured the story is that it's called It's Hard to Say Goodbye. So basically, the idea is maybe her husband or something like that's on the airplane, and she's like, coming out and like, no, wait, don't go. But anyway, as you can see, I chose certain colors for a reason. Like I wanted her hat to match her shoes. I like these warm colors of her to kind of be in contrast to the cooler colors of the background of the sky and stuff. And of course the wheat is kind of a warm color, but I want her to be a lot warmer than that so she stands out from it. And so that's why I did it that way. And then the yellow dress, I just kind of represents summer and stuff to me. So I like that color, and I thought it was a good contrast with the background colors. Okay, now let's go ahead and go through this, and I'll show you guys here. So the first thing I do is I lay down the colors with my sky brush. And so if you guys haven't got my brush pack, it is free. Just go to my website. The website is in the description, masterpaintingnow.com. And if you go there, then click on newsletter. It's just all you have to do is just sign up with your email. I don't ask anything else from you. You don't have to go through any steps. It's just boom, you'll get an email with the links to my brushes, both for Krita and for PaintStorm. They're my Bob Ross brushes. Now, just to give you an idea, these brushes are way better than any other brushes I've seen that try to simulate. I've only seen one other brush pack that tries to be or simulate Bob Ross painting for a Coral Painter, and they're just not very good at all. The end results, they don't. Anyway, the point is they don't paint like Bob Ross at all. The techniques you're using with those brushes are totally different than the techniques. But what's cool about my brushes is that I use the exact same. I can follow along and watch Bob Ross, which I've already done, and paint right along with them and do the exact same strokes, exact same techniques. Everything's the same. That's how they're designed to be used. So anyway, so I laid down the sky color. Now the first thing I knew I wanted is I wanted an out of this world sky. So I used this kind of very turquoise blue, and then another kind of almost reminds me of phthalo blue, but with maybe a little bit of white in it. And I really wanted it to be this out of this world looking sky. And so I laid down the main colors like that, and it's very simple, just flat colors. You know, you can even blur it out a little bit if you want to. The clouds are going to go over to all that, and it's going to make it look really nice. So you don't have to spend a lot of time to really blend the sky too much. And I'm using now my cloud brush, and I'm using the detailed cloud brush that I have 3 different cloud brushes now, I think, in my brush pack. At this time I was still developing brushes. But yeah, so then you use the blender tool, and yeah, so I'm going to show this really quick in real time a little bit. So when I'm laying down the clouds here, you can see that I'm just doing little circles the same way Bob Ross would take his brush and would just do little circles like this, just happy little circles. And they're very, very, very soft. You know, you just kind of soft, and then you kind of go over a couple other parts that you want a little bit darker. And in this case, though, I want a little bit more of a painterly look, and so I'm using a lot of colors. If you ever want that very painted look, use a lot of muted colors. So, like, you can pretty much use every color in the freaking color wheel. Just make them very desaturated, meaning put them toward white or toward black. You know, that is toward the gray side. So on here you can see on this little color wheel, on this side over here. So just take the color and move it to the left. So whether it's down here to the left or up here in the middle, you know, find the value. That's just the value of how gray you want it to be. Make it almost gray, but where it has a little bit of color to it. So this right here I think is like a yellow actually. But when you take yellow and you put it to almost gray, when you mix it next to certain colors, like especially like next to reds and stuff, like, or like blue, sorry, cool colors, or even I think even reds, it'll look almost green. It's a really cool trick. So you want to mess around with these different kinds of grays and see what they look like next to other colors, because it's quite amazing. Like if you take blue and put blue down to very, very gray, when it's next to certain colors like skin colors, for example, warmer colors, it'll actually look like purple. It's really cool, like this kind of very, very, you know, gray purple. And anyway, so adding a bunch of colors to things will make it look more painterly. And also makes it look more realistic, because, like, especially skin tones. I'll be doing a video on skin tones because to get realistic skin tones it really takes using a lot of colors. There's a lot of colors in the skin, and there's a lot. I'll go through common mistakes and things like that. And so as you can see here, I'm just laying out the basic idea of the clouds. And then what I'll do is I'll use my blender brush. I think I have a cloud blender brush too now. But right here I'm actually using one of the stock blenders, and then to add a little bit of like almost haze, and then this other blender here is the third one down. This actually comes with PaintStorm, and then this third one down here, this is under blenders. This little icon, looks like a teardrop kind of. That third blender right here is really nice to just like flick it up, just like Bob Ross, just lightly lightly flick it up if you want to make it look like wind, and then lightly just brush back and forth just with the lightest bit of pressure, and it just blurs out some of those clouds. And I want to keep some texture, so I don't like blur out the top of this cloud or the top of some other clouds. And it's a really nice way, an easy way to get some nice clouds in the background. So yeah, basic tip: use a lot of gray colors. By gray I mean you just take a color and just move it almost all the way to gray, and then to where you can just barely see its color. And it's amazing how much that gray will actually look like a color next to other colors. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead here, add a couple more clouds. Okay, now when I'm adding the trees here, I start with the dark color. Now the color you can see here is blue. It's more of a, going more toward the cyan. So it's between blue and cyan, but it's more toward the cyan color. And or maybe what that would be, ultramarine blue with white. Anyway, so then I take it down and look, I gray it out quite a bit, so it's going toward the left, and as you go down toward black, it's automatically becoming desaturating way. But this blue over here versus over here is different. This is more saturated, this is way less saturated. And I want to talk about color theory and saturation and shadows at some point, because it's a really fascinating. Why are shadows more saturated, or at least why do they appear to be more saturated than what people call highlights or the direct light, where the light's hitting your. Anyway, we'll get into that at some point if people are interested. So it's really good. It really helps you to paint better, especially like skin tones and things like that. But painting anything like cloth and everything like that. Yeah, I have a lot to say about color theory. But anyway, I'm using a very soft brush at first. I forget this one here. I forget what this one's called. I can't really see that, so small. Anyway, I have different bush, and bush. You can use the bushes to make trees as well. And I have different couple different brushes that simulate this. And it's really good. Some are more detailed, some are more fuzzy. But what I do is I start with more of a muted blue color, not too muted though, kind of like in the middle as you see here. So instead of going too, I don't want it too saturated, I don't want it too desaturated. And anyway, it's desaturated is going toward black, but I mean is going more toward the left or right here on this. It makes a difference. If you just take the pure color and then just add black, or if you take the pure color and add black and white, it's a little different. Because you're taking away the color altogether. Okay, the difference on this color wheel from here down is just taking this color and adding black to it. From here over to over here is you're actually adding less of this color. This is more black and less color. This is more of the color and black mixed together. So if I go down here, that's more of the blue and black mixed together. Over here is more black, which is a little bit of the color into it, and actually a little bit of white. So anyway, it does change how it looks. So I add this kind of bluish color down first. Whenever I do trees, especially green trees or in bushes, I almost always start with this as my base, even with actual oil paints or acrylics, whatever. And then I paint on top of that. And that gives you a nice dark shadow color. So one of the mistakes that beginners make is they think about what they see and what color it is, and so they don't use any sort of color theory or palette or anything the masters have learned over time. Instead, they just go, hey, shadows are black, or the shadows look, whatever. Maybe they'll use a dark brown or dark green. Hey, the whole tree is green, so I'm going to use a really dark green for the shadows, a mid-green for the midtones, and then like a bright green, or sometimes even white, which is insane. Looks totally crazy. Anyway, so this will help you get a nice realistic look without having to use a bunch of colors. And that's what I wanted. I didn't want to spend too much time. Now I'm adding, notice the green here, it's on the saturated side, but it's going down toward black. And I'm just very lightly touching over it, so it's picking up the color underneath. That is, it's not just that pure green color. It's a very light touch to get that to happen. And then notice here, I'm using this, the green is going towards cyan a little bit, so it's kind of a bluish green. And now I'm adding that color. This is the third color I'm adding in there, and I'm just very lightly touching it in. And this starts to give the impression that there's depth to the trees. What I'm not doing here is I'm not even looking at the photo at this point. I've already looked at the photo, I studied it, and I'm no longer looking at it. The only time I look at the photo again is when I'm painting her, because I want to get somewhat of a likeness of her pose and of her hat, and then her dress. But other than that, I look at the photo a little bit again for this part, for the wheat. But I try not to look at the photo too much, because otherwise I'll find myself trying to paint what I'm looking at, and I'll get bogged down in details. That's not what I want to do. I want to paint a likeness. I don't want to paint what I'm looking at. And it's to me, that is the true joy of painting. And that's what's so awesome about Bob Ross, is he's painting from his imagination. So that is the most fun. That is the joy of painting. When you can paint something, I'm going to go ahead and play this while I'm talking real quick. When you can, that we can see some real-time stuff. And by the way, all these colors here are all Bob Ross's colors. They're all different variations of Bob Ross's colors and digital. Now I'm using quite a bright green here. Typically I wouldn't do this, but it's a nice bright sunny day, and I really wanted to capture that really bright sunny day. I usually use a lot more desaturated colors, and this is quite a saturated color, but I'm doing it very, very light touches of it, so it's kind of blending with the colors underneath it. Sometimes I would even add a little bit of like a yellow green on for the final little highlights here and there. But anyway, so now I forgot what I was going to even say now. Oh yeah, so with Bob Ross, just really quickly, when I drew from detail, like I said, you can look at my Johnny Depp video if I haven't already said that. I recorded this a couple times, and I know I said it in one of them. So if you look at my channel and type search my channel for, if you don't know how to search at my channel, just click on my name, Learn to Draw. Takes you to my channel's homepage. Click on right next to About, there's a little search like magnifying glass. Click on that. That will search only my channel. And then search Johnny Depp Realism. I think that should bring it up. Notice, wait real quickly here, the color I'm using for some of these dark shadows. So I noticed that this is nice if I wanted that kind of less contrast, more kind of like Monet. He really liked to paint with very muted colors, and there wasn't a whole lot of contrast. But I wanted more contrast. So notice here I'm using almost like a phthalo blue, but it's leaning more toward the side of purple. That is, there's red in this blue, and then I right down the center and I bring it right down here to where it's really dark. And this is going to give me this nice shadow. So notice what I'm not doing. I'm not using green. There's very little green in the bushes. And in fact, it's mostly blues. And yet it still looks like green trees. And the reason why that is because we know that trees or bushes are green. And all you have to do is if there's enough green in there, we'll register as the object is green, even though most of the colors are actually blue. Even these ones, if you look at them, most of this is all blue, like different forms of blue and like gray blues, but that little bit of green right there makes it pop out, and your brain goes, oh yeah, that's green. Really good trick. This is stuff, you know, that you learn over the years with color theory, and if you want that more like painterly look, then this is definitely the way to do it. Even some painters, they'll add black and white to their green. Like this is if you're using actual real paints. I'll go ahead and play this again. If you're using actual real paints, they'll take their mid-base green, and for their shadows they'll add a little bit of black, a little bit of white to it. Now here's the thing, most blacks that they're using has a bluish tint to it, so it's a bluish black. There's neutral blacks. That is, if you add white to it, it'll have a nice neutral gray, won't have any color to it, won't lean toward the warm or cool. And there's warm blacks, so that if you add white to them, they'll look kind of brownish, like a brownish gray. And then there is like ivory black, and I think Mars black might be a neutral. Ivory black is more of a cool black. So when you add white to it, the gray it makes is a cool gray. It looks like a little bit of on the bluer side. And so in this case, this would actually, on this color wheel here, this would actually have some black or some white in it. So it's if I were to just, anyway, the point is, if I were to just take a ivory black and add a little bit of white to it, I can get some similar color to this. And yeah, so it's when they add black and white, their white also, if it's titanium white, it's a cooler white anyway. And so it's going to cool the color. So as they add just white to the green, it's already desaturating and cooling the color, that is pulling it more toward the bluer side of green. And save often. This is important. I was like, well, I painted a lot without saving. And so now I'm going ahead and saving it really quick. Now, I usually give it generic names at first, so I remember what I'm doing, and then later on I'll rename it to like something like, you know, It's Hard to Say Goodbye or something. That's the song, isn't it? Anyway, so when you add the titanium white to the green, already that's leaning it toward the cooler side, that is toward the bluer side. And then when you add the ivory black as well to darken it, so you kind of like grain it down with the black and white, but that both of those have cooler tints to them. They're leaning on the cooler side, and so it's going to cool down the entire color, and that's why it works. So basically, they get a color that ends up looking very similar to this by using that method. So there's different methods you can do it. I prefer just to take if I was using actual paints here, I would just take the actual blue, and then I would just gray it down a little bit, or I would just use my opposite color to gray it down, so I'd add a little bit of red to it, and that would kind of mute that a little bit. And then or I would take, for a kind of a cool color, I would take burnt umber and I think phthalo blue, and just mix those two together to give you a nice black, and a little bit more phthalo blue than burnt umber. That way it leans more towards the blue side. And if I need to lighten it down a little bit, just add a little bit of white to that, and that's going to be a really good color. Or I can even add a little bit of the green to it. And there's different ways to do it, but in digital, you know, you just pick I usually just pick that blue color and then bring it right down here to the middle and gray, or to the middle and then down toward the black until it's the contrast that I want. Now with the wheat field, I start with more of a dark kind of burnt umberish red, you know, a little bit of red there and burnt umber type color. So a brown that leans toward the reddish. And now I'm using some muted colors. Look how desaturated this is. Now directly in the middle is a good starting point for colors. I moved over to the left to even make it more desaturated. And then I'm like, well, how am I going to paint this wheat field? Now at this point here I'm going to go kind of fast because I go through a lot of different, I never painted a wheat before, so I wasn't sure like, how am I going to do this? And at first I start out by using this kind of brush here. It just had a brush up that kind of reminded me of wheat, sort of, you know, like the very idea, the impressionistic concept of wheat. The main idea is that I want it to be smaller in the back and bigger in the front. Now, when I first did this, I was thinking like Bob Ross. I was still in the Bob Ross mode where he paints almost everything as if you're kind of looking down at it. So when you get to the bottom of the painting, it's usually like you're looking down at things. So you see everything from a top-down perspective almost. And so I just like by default end up doing that because I wasn't looking at the painting. And I'm like, why does this look wrong? And so then I went back to the painting, or the photograph, sorry. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. The perspective is really high. I'm not looking down at all. I'm way down here. I'm like, if I'm the cameraman, I'm down by her butt area. And that's why some of this wheat is above the horizon line, because the horizon line is down here. And you can see that it's going above. So I'm like, okay, that's what I did wrong. And that's what I realized I did wrong. And so I just changed it really fast. So we'll go ahead and fast forward through all this boring part here. Bloom, 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 bloom. Only adding a few different colors, different muted colors of yellow, basically. And that can actually give a bunch of variety. To give it more variety, though, I'm going to add different muted colors. By muted, I just mean desaturated. So going toward black or white or both. And now I'm adding like some orange that are desaturated. I always start with a lot of desaturated colors because people have a tendency, I think, to paint too much bright colors. And when you do too many bright colors, sometimes there's nothing to kind of pop out of the painting. So I recommend starting with desaturated colors, and then you can start adding brights to pop things out here and there. Here I went through all this trouble painting all this. I just copy and pasted it, and then I'm just gonna kind of use that as a template there, and then I'll take out this repetitive pattern. And so I'm starting to get an idea now how it looks. Okay, now here's where I didn't realize yet, but I'm top down. I'm looking top down at it right now. That's not what I want. I don't want to be looking. I want it to be like the photograph. And then here I decided, instead of doing a sketch, just to go right in and just block in her form. I did make a new layer because I'm like, you know what? I spent a lot of time on this. I don't want to mess it up. So just in case, oftentimes I'll just work on one layer for the whole thing, especially for like the Bob Ross style paintings. But if I add people to them, I usually put on a new layer just in case I mess up, so I don't mess up all that work I just did. Anyway, so, but after that, I need to kind of paint around her so it looks like it's in the painting. That's why if you often paint on one layer, it looks so much more painterly and better. It doesn't look like pasted in there, just paste it on like a sticker. And to get rid of that look, if you do paint it on a first layer, either merge it down or on that layer, start to paint right around it as if it were one layer, and cut into her with the colors around her. That will make her not look so pasted in and make her look like you painted it. Anyway, so I just kind of block in the basic idea of the pose and some basic shapes. And I usually start with silhouettes. I find that to be the best way, for me personally, is start with silhouettes and start with a darker color. And then you can add your lighter colors on there. Now for the skin of this painting, I could have really gone to town, and I usually add a lot of color to skin, little minor details, but she's so tiny. By tiny I mean she's not very, there's no reason for her to be very detailed. All I need is the idea that she's there. I don't have to add fingers to her or anything. And that's what's cool about this style of painting. You'll notice this in a lot of great master works. Even people in the foreground, oftentimes, if you look close at the painting, now it's really hard to find a good big picture, but like if you go to Wikipedia, for example, and type in Rembrandt, the first couple, like his self-portrait, and there's a couple other ones on that page, if you click on them, they'll take you to a full-size painting where someone actually went to the gallery, took a picture where you can see all the details, every brushstroke, and how much color he puts into his face is absolutely outstandingly amazing. I mean, there's muted greens and muted blues and the muted blue looks like kind of like a purple. There's dark reds around or bright reds around the right, just like one little stroke, around the nostril, and it's just it's amazing. It's crazy. You got to look at it. But what you will notice if you study the masters is sometimes hands, they don't put a bunch of detail in the hands. It's literally just they paint a few strokes with the fingers and then maybe a couple little shadow areas and a couple of colors for the knuckles. They don't put much detail to it. If you look it up close, it looks kind of like, what is that? But from a distance, it reads like a hand and it looks really cool. And that's a technique that I really like because I don't like spending a lot of time on paintings, and I've always admired those kinds of paintings. They look really cool where when you get up close to them, they kind of look like a mess almost if you get too close to it. But you step back for a second, it's like, wow, that looks like, very realistic, not photo realistic, but realistic, painterly realistic, and I really like that look. And so yeah, anyway, that's what I'm gonna do with her here. Matter of fact, while I was talking right there, I should have at least been playing it real time, huh? And I'm using, I think, brush. Oh, I was actually trying Borodante. Can't remember his name. I was actually trying his brush set for this program, and it was okay. I liked him all right, but I ended up making my own brush set that I like better, that fits my style. But notice I'm just doing individual strokes. When you paint in this style, you're not going to do a bunch of blending. That takes forever anyway. That's one thing I've always hated about digital painting. When you really go for a bunch of render detail, is you have to like blend everything out and blend everything together, and it just takes forever. With this style, where you're just going for like the kind of old master style and more of a painterly style and doesn't need to be very detailed, you don't have to do all that. Even if it's up close and it's a portrait, you still don't have to do all that blending. It's just putting little strokes next to each other, and maybe a little bit of blending here and there, but most of it's just a bunch of strokes next to each other, and they give that idea, and that's what that's what Rembrandt did. If you look at his self-portrait, you'll notice that this is a bunch of little strokes next to each other. Nothing's blended, and yet when you look at it, if you see, most of the pictures you've seen are going to be small on the internet anyway, and you're not going to see none of that. You can't see none of that. Now here's where, notice that my skin tones. So I use kind of a base skin tone, a normal kind of peachy base skin tone. When I put the shadows in, though, I'm using a more warmer. So I take the base skin tone, and then so whatever my base skin tone is, usually between red and yellow, and then I go toward the white, right? And it'll be like right about here. To get my shadow, I drop it down and then to the right, and that will give me this shadow color. And then I'll want to go in here and add like maybe a little dash of kind of an orangish red color, more saturated for the elbow area and back of the knee maybe. And then I want to just add a little bit of the sky color or something into the shadow, because shadows pick up the surrounding ambient light. In this case, if you're outside, it's going to pick up that kind of blue ambient lighting, and so I can take the blue and then put it really toward gray, and it's almost going to look kind of purple when you add that kind of desaturated blue into there, and just add a few strokes here and there, and that's going to bring it out. But and then for the highlights, you take your skin tone, and then you want to take your sorry, I forgot to mention something. So I do two things. If it's right here, and that's my skin tone, and it's up here, I drop it down and to the right, and then I take my color wheel and I move it toward the warm side. So I move it toward red a little bit. That's how I get my shadow tone. And then to get my highlight tone, and it doesn't matter whatever my base skin tone is, this is the general rule I follow. It all depends on the color of light. I can get into that when I talk about skin tones, but then what I do is I take the skin tone and I move it toward the yellow and then move it up toward white. And that will give me my highlight color for the skin tone. And I can't remember if I even add highlights to her. I think I decided not to, because it's like, yeah, it's a sunny day and stuff, but I just need the impression of a person. I don't really need a lot of colors. Throw in some, notice my yellow, it's not, even the saturated, look how saturated it looks. It looks very, very yellow and saturated. Why? Because it's next to a very desaturated yellow. So watch this. Here's a little trick. So notice my color here is pretty desaturated. It's not quite in the center, it's a little bit to the right, but it looks pretty desaturated. Now when I add the next color of yellow, I'm just going to take it, and notice it's also more orange. All I do now is bump it toward yellow. This is actually really saturated right now. It's to the left though, so it's the more white you add to it, the less saturated it is. That is the more desaturated, because white and black is completely desaturated. It's like white and black, right? And I'm adding her actual breast in there because I realize you should be able to see her breast. I don't know if that's in the photo or not. Let me see. Yeah, you can kind of see a little bit of the material there. And by the way, I didn't choose not to paint this. I didn't want to paint all the stripes. One, I just didn't like the stripes anyway. I don't really care for striped stuff very much. But it wasn't that I didn't want to paint the stripes. It was that I didn't like it. I didn't like the colors. It didn't work with what I wanted for my painterly style. But as you can see, so when you paint this way, what you're doing is you're not trying to paint what you see. You're trying, and by the way, I'm going to fix all this right here. You see in the end painting. Remember, this is supposed to be way up here. It's supposed to be like this. Right now, we're like this. That's not how it's supposed to be. But anyway, so when you paint this way, it feels more like you're painting from imagination, because you glance at the photo, like, cool, I get the idea, I get the feeling I want. Then you just start painting. I'm not even looking at the photo anymore. I'm just painting. And then after I'm done with that, I'm like, okay, I need to look at the photo again. The pathway, where is it at, things like that. And then I'll paint that in, and then it's like, okay, now I need to look at the photo again to see her general pose, and then boom, block that in there. Once that's blocked in, I don't need to look at it anymore. Once I maybe just see like where the shadows are, because I want to make sure that's accurate to the photo. That's one of the main things for references, because you want to get the light and shadow right. So as I continue with my color here, it's not way over here. Now here's where I add this color. Now this color I'm gonna start blending out because I thought it was just too bright, but look how bright it still looks. It's pretty desaturated, yet it still looks pretty bright because it's next to a more desaturated color. So it's a really cool trick. If you start out with desaturated colors, then you don't have to bump up the color much towards saturation to make it look very vibrant and bright. And that gives you a less cartoonish look. It gives you that more realistic painted look. Same thing with the hat. Like any color I do this with. So if this is the base color of the hat, for the shadows, I'm going to slightly move it toward the blue side. So, almost always I do that. So if it was a green hat, I'd move it slightly toward the yellow, maybe even slightly toward the blue. It just depends on what color it is outside and what I'm going for. And then I'll drop it down and to the right. Almost always that's the case, that shadows are like that. It's very rare that you drop it to the left. Unless you're trying to go for like a Monet style, he did that a lot. Anyway, and then if there is going to be any highlighted color on material, which is very rare, material, see, this has no highlight on it. You can see there's some shadows on the shirt, but there's no like white, there's no highlight because it doesn't reflect anything. And there's also really no direct light. It kind of just absorbs everything and becomes the color. Now this is something that happens in Painter. I don't know how or why that happens yet, but I just went ahead and found the layer it was on, deleted it. I have no idea like what causes that. It's some sort of bug in the program. But anyway, so yeah, I'm trying to find it out right now. If you do that, you'll get nice shadow colors. And then sometimes, like I said, I'll add the shadow or the sky color if it's outside, or whatever the main color is to the atmosphere or the room that they're in. I'll add that into my shadows. Okay, so I go ahead and get rid of that. Paint in her thing. Now here's where I use I take this brush here, and I can't remember if I'm using a scatter. If I have it on scatter. Yeah, so I have it to where it's kind of rocking back and forth. It's a type of scatter. So I'm just kind of painting like this, and then it's kind of scattering back and forth for me. And this is just to get a base texture down that I can paint on top of. It's like a quick shortcut. It's the same thing as if, Bob Ross would take his fan brush and just kind of smash in there back and forth to get, a texture. And I don't know how he would actually go about painting a field. I've never seen him paint a field before of wheat, but I imagine that's how you do. He probably uses his fan brush and just go back and forth like this, and then he might go in there and add a few little details. But yeah, so now I'm adding some actual details, and this is where I start to realize that, hey, you know what? I need to really bring my wheat up to the horizon line to give that perspective that the photo had. And also I'm going to overlap her with some wheat so that it looks like there's some depth into the painting. Adding some darker colors, and use a lot of colors. Like, I can't recommend this enough. And I might even go back to this painting and visit it again and add more color to it. That is, add some more color to the skin, add some more color, because this was more of like a quick test painting more than anything else. But I can easily go back and add some more colors to things. More, just a little more. I didn't feel it was necessary, but I can add a little more color to the shadows of her shirt and things like that, or of her skin tone and all that kind of stuff. And I usually do that, but I was just trying to get this done quickly. I didn't want to spend too much time on it. As you can see, it's going to be 1 hour and 49 minutes, which is pretty fast for a painting. Okay, now I think I use my cloud blender. I just want to kind of blend this out because I want to make it look kind of blurry. Now you can see the trees in the background here. You can see some of the individual leaves. That's from my brush. And I can go ahead and paint those by hand really fast. It doesn't take very long. But why I do that when I have a brush that does it for me. And it's very similar to as if I was using oils, I would just take my fan brush, or I'd take a 2-inch brush or a 1-inch brush and kind of like pull the paint on it to where it's kind of like a knife blade, and kind of spray the corner and push the corner down a couple times so it kind of gets the bristles on there, and then bam, just kind of push against the canvas a couple times, and that's going to give me that nice texture of like leaves kind of sticking out the edge of the bush. Same way like Bob Ross and a lot of painters would do that. And so I rarely zoom in. I try to do most of the painting, especially if I'm painting in this style, all zoomed out. So it really does help you not get bogged down in details. So you're not trying to paint details. You're just trying to capture the essence of what it is you're looking at. But here I felt I needed some detail here, so I had to zoom in a little bit to get some of that wheat. And then I'm just adding some more. Notice here I added some sky color to the shadow, and already it starts to look more painterly. I'm adding just a little bit of highlight. Notice my highlight here is more yellow, so I moved it a little bit more toward the yellow, and then up and to the left. So up toward the left, meaning toward the corner of where white is. And that's going to give it like the sun's hitting your skin, and it's changing the color of the skin. And then I add a little bit of blue. Notice I add that nice kind of like reddish color right there to the elbow. You can see already right here I added some, I don't know if you saw me, but I added a little bit of the blue color here into the shadow. But notice the hair, it's just a few strokes, just bam, 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 a few strokes down, and that's it. Hair's done. Arm, just a few strokes. I mean, I love this style of painting. It's so fun and easy to do. And it's really about form. It's all about light and shadow. And here I'm adding some sky color. So notice that it's just too bright and out of order. It's just doesn't fit into the painting. It feels like it shouldn't be there, because any object that is in an environment takes on all the ambient light and all that. All the light and stuff is going to change. So when you're outside, there's two main light sources. You have the sun, which is kind of a warmer light, about 5,000 K. Some would even say that's kind of a cooler light, but it tends to make things look warmer because it's so bright, or I don't know. It's weird because it does register as 5,000 K. I've actually went outside and tested on a nice, bright, sunny day. And I'm like, that's weird. 5,000 K light bulb, though, doesn't really look very warm. It looks more kind of a neutral, whitish color, but nonetheless, it warms things up. And at least that's how I do it to make it look more artistic. And then the blue. So if it's a nice blue sky out, now if it's a gray sky, the ambient light color is going to be gray instead of blue. So everything's going to look more gray. There's not going to be as much shadows in everything. You notice on a gray day, everything looks kind of flat. There's not much contrast in anything because there's not hardly any shadows. I mean, there's shadows, but they're very dulled. There's hardly any contrast. And I don't know, I don't like gray days. They're kind of boring looking. But anyway, so when you take something red outside, it still looks red to your eye, but what really happens is the sun is hitting it, making it look the color, the natural color it is. You don't want to put white onto fabric. That's just a big no-no, because fabric just doesn't do that. But what does happen is the ambient light changes the color a little bit. So the ambient light in this case is a big dome, the nice blue sky, which is reflecting all that blue into everything. So blue goes into everything. So if you're painting with real paints, what you would do is you would take your base color and then you would add a little bit of blue to it, which will kind of neutralize it. If it's red, for example, in this case it's kind of more like a pink, and that will neutralize it. So if you're working digitally, I just paint the color first, and then I just take my blue, and I just lightly touch it, get the color I want, and then I sample that color, and then I should be playing this, huh? Then I sample that color, and then I paint with that color. So I'll just kind of lightly touch it with the blue. Like I'll show you right here in real time in a second. Notice now I'm kind of blending out the sides and edges, so it looks like it's not just pasted on there. It looks like it's actually been painted in one layer. So I get the color and I sample it. See, once I sample the color a couple times, now I got the color I want, and I just kind of paint that over. And notice it kind of grays out, it kind of dulls out the red. I leave a little bit of red, just a few little parts where the red's poking through, but for the most part I have toned it all down because that's what would happen. It doesn't always happen. There are times where if the sun's really bright, a green cloth will look super green, but there's still some blue in that green. And if you were just to paint it just super green, it wouldn't look right. You'd be like, why does this look cartoonish? And that's why, because there's no blue in it. But so I want to add a little bit of blue. Notice now I'm adding a little bit of blue to the shadows. And this is going to give more of a, that, like I said, more of that painterly look, and also less, it's not going to look like cartoonish, you know, it's going to look like it should, more realistic. And I'm going to kind of go past this part here, get to the next part. I wanted to add just the hint that there was fingers there. So you can kind of see the individual strokes where the 3 fingers are, so it kind of looks like boom, boom, like there's kind of the hint of fingers, and then that one finger sticking out gives the idea from a distance that there's fingers there. Notice there I added the little bit of blue to the shadow, and this is going to make it look more painterly and make it fit into the whole entire painting and not feel like she's just pasted on there, and feels like she's actually in the environment. Super important. It's all throughout the dress. You can see the blue here. Yeah, so you want to add a lot of colors to things, and that is a lot of your background colors. Add it into everything, and add every color into everything. That's another thing you'll see masters do a lot of. They'll add every color. I'm going to go ahead and play so I'm talking. They'll add every color into everything, meaning that, for example, if you see like a building in the background, and then there's stuff in the foreground, they'll take the colors and mix them back and forth. So they'll take some of the colors, if there's people in the foreground, they'll take some of the colors of the people and they'll paint some of those colors into the building. Then they'll take some of the building colors and paint them into the people. Or let's say there's a boat in a building. They'll paint some of the colors of the boat into the building, some of the colors of the building into the boat. And it adds this kind of cohesiveness to the whole painting. And it's a really, really good trick to use. I highly recommend trying it. Notice here it's just a little bit detailed, just a little couple brush strokes. I'm not blending here. I'm just adding brush strokes next to each other. And sometimes it blends a little bit, you know, just like oil paints. If you put a stroke next to another stroke, sometimes they'll kind of blend together if you do it really lightly. But I'm not going in there and like sampling, you know, blend, 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 blend. I added some, this is another trick right there, is at the point where the shadow, I don't know if you can see in this webcam anyway, the light's kind of not right, but at the point, well, I guess there's a shadow right here. Anyway, at the point where the shadow meets the highlight or the natural color of the skin, I don't know if you can see any of that. Anyway, you probably can't see none of the shadows, but where the shadow, whatever, where the shadow meets and rolls over, so where the shadow is rolling over on the object to where the regular color is, right along that line of the shadow, you want to add a redder color. You don't want it, or a warmer color. So take whatever color that is and make it warmer, and it's gonna be a value in between. It's gonna be a little bit lighter value than the shadow, and a lot more saturated. And usually, in this case, if it's skin, it's gonna be more like more reddish. And that's gonna be like one of the most saturated areas. I mean, technically your mid-tone is the most saturated, but anyway, that gets in a whole different topic. But mid-tones usually are typically right in the middle of your color wheel, usually like something like this. Or if it's up here more, that's actually really desaturated, because there's a lot of white in that, which is when white is not saturated. But so there's a lot of confusion about what it means for something to be saturated or desaturated. Saturated means way up here in the right hand corner. That's saturated, that's pure color. Anything that goes away from that corner that has white or black in it is no longer, that gets less saturated. So the more I go over here toward the white, this color here is very, very desaturated because it's very close to the white. It's very far away from the color. There's very little color in that. And what I'm painting with right now, there's very little color in that, so it's not a very saturated color. And yeah, so anyway, you want to take it and just make it more saturated and run that right along all your shadows. If you just take one of your old paintings, or just take any painting that you've done recently with skin, anywhere where the shadow is rolling and meeting the non-shadow color, so where the shadow is meeting, it's called the terminal, where the shadow is meeting the mid-tone color, right along that line of the shadow, take the shadow color, sample it, make it a little bit more a little bit warmer. So on the color wheel, just take it and move this a little bit warmer, then move it down and then to the right, or excuse me, in this case, just move it to the right, maybe even up and to the right because you want it a little bit lighter, and then just paint that very, very thin line along the terminal, and watch the difference already. that your painting will have. And this is something a lot of people miss when they're painting skin and figures, but it's really important. All right, yeah, so sorry for the long video. I guess I shouldn't say sorry. Hopefully I talked about a lot of stuff that will help you paint better. I know, like, you know, there's a lot of the videos are popular. They're like short videos, and that's cool and everything, but they don't teach a lot. They're not learning a lot. And I like to try to teach a lot of stuff as much as I can in my videos, rather than just, you know, anyway, so I think that's pretty much it. I'm trying to see if I do anything else. Oh, that's right. This is what I was thinking. I'm like, okay, why is she just waving at the sky? Because I didn't really have an idea what I want. I just knew I wanted to capture the essence of that painting. Then I was thinking, she's just waving at the sky. I had a couple birds there with and these are just my bird brushes. Yeah, I could have went there and just painted a couple brush strokes and had birds, but I was like, well, why not just use my bird brushes already there? And that comes with my Bob Ross brush pack. Again, most everything I painted here was with my Bob Ross brush pack. The only thing I could have actually even painted her with my mountain brush. I actually made a new brush I really like. I just basically took my mountain texture brush, the one that you like. That's like the Bob Ross when he uses the knife and just goes. You can do the exact same thing with that brush. You just start kind of a little bit hard and then very light, just very light, and it adds that nice texture, like breaking paint. Anyway, so I took that and I changed the texture on it and to more like a kind of a canvas texture, and I changed the brush tip shape, and now it's an awesome oil brush. It just paints really awesome. I love it. So yeah, PaintStorm is an absolutely fantastic program. I can't wait till they have the touch thing. That's what makes me not want to use it as much, but like I said, most of the time I'm zoomed out anyway. So anyway, I'm like, yeah, I need to add the airplane, or anyway, that's what I had the idea. I'm like, what is she waving at? She needs to be waving at something. I'm like, what could she be waving at? You know, I'm like, maybe there's someone, like, I was gonna put someone back here, like right here somewhere, but being very small back here, but you can tell they're kind of like they're waving too, and like they're like meeting up for the first time in a long time. I'm like, that's kind of cool. But then I'm like, you know what? I can throw an airplane in the sky, and that actually is kind of a cool story. I like that, so that's what I decided to do. The airplane, I don't know if I add it in this video or not, but yeah. So, oh yeah, mess around with colors. So in this case, another way to get cohesive after you're finished with the painting, another way to get like a cohesiveness to everything, like something that just kind of brings all the painting together, is make a layer above it, drop in a color. If you want it to be more warm, more cool, drop a color and then set that layer to soft light, and then turn down the opacity a little bit. Sometimes a lot of bit, just depends on what you're going for. So I tried this color here, nice, and kind of like almost like a very red color. And I kind of like that. I was like, that's kind of cool. It kind of makes the clouds look a little bit purple because it's mixing with the blue. I'm like, that's kind of cool. I like that. And then I tried a couple different colors, and I think I ended up going with this kind of darker and a little bit desaturated red. And then I turned down the opacity. Oops. Yeah, so something like that. And then I turned the opacity down. Look up how far the opacity is down. So it's like this is halfway right here. It's like a quarter away, only a quarter way on. So it's just a little bit like that. I turn it off and on so I can see the difference. And that adds a more warmness to the whole entire painting. It kind of just changes the color of everything. It unifies the whole entire painting. It puts one color into everything. And I like doing that. I do that to a lot of my paintings, so it's really cool. Yeah, so okay, hopefully you guys learned something from this. If you have, do me a favor and hit the thumbs up button. I appreciate it. And then also share it, because if you learn something from this, there's a good chance that somebody else will. Let's pay it forward. Just go ahead and share it on your favorite social media, and yeah, maybe someone else will also benefit from it and dig it and learn something. If you have any questions at all about drawing or painting, please leave them in the comments so other people can benefit from the answers. I'd really appreciate that. And then if you want to be up to date on when I come out with like something really cool, like a really cool lesson. I don't post all my lessons, obviously, on my newsletter. Just every now and again, when I feel like it's a really good one, then I'll go ahead and I'll send it out to my newsletter. And also, if you want to be up to date on my giveaways, that's the best way to do it, because a lot of people aren't getting notified through YouTube, and Facebook is doing an okay job, but the best way to do it is to sign up to a newsletter, because when you sign up to a newsletter, you're guaranteed to get that email because you accepted it. And like I said, I rarely send out newsletters. If anything, I'm probably too lazy and don't do it enough. Sometimes I'll go a long time without ever sending out a newsletter. But what's cool about that is when you sign up to the newsletter, you'll automatically get my brushes. You'll get my Bob Ross brushes, and you'll get my for both Krita, which is a pretty awesome free program. I like it a lot, actually. It's really good, especially for free. It's just a fantastic program. And then Paint Storm, which is only 20 bucks. And so yeah, there's brush packs. They work very similar, and both of them you can follow along and do Bob Ross type stuff. But also just painting anything, there's really good brushes. And if you haven't seen how to use them, it's like a 2-hour video, but it's really well worth watching. And it's my Bob Ross technique, how to use my brushes. That's really important to check that out. And it's awesome. But yeah, so anyway, share. I appreciate it. And leave a comment. Please ask questions. Don't be shy. Any questions at all, especially if you have questions about this particular video and things I've talked about. So yeah, I think that's pretty much covers everything. Just mess around with colors. And newsletter. Another reason to sign up to a newsletter is you'll be guaranteed that when I do my giveaways, like my Cintiq giveaway, it's $1,000 Cintiq, by the way. It's the same size as mine here that I use. I don't know if you can see that. This is my touch one. My other one's not the one I'm giving away. Doesn't have the touch, but it does have this nice zoom type touch thing on it. It's awesome. Like you can just I really like it a lot. It's the 12WX. It was the model before this one, and it's great. I love it a lot. In fact, I held on to it for so long because I was like, I don't know if I like this. And then eventually I got used to the touch thing. Now I love the touch thing, but at first I hated it because my hand would touch things and screw things up. So now I have to wear one of these little gloves like this here. Don't worry, I'm going to get to the newsletter thing. Getting sidetracked because I have ADD. And that makes it to where when I'm touching it with my palm or something, it doesn't set off weird shit and fuck my program up. Sorry for the cussing if that bothers you. Anyway, so another reason to sign up to the newsletter, one, you get the free brushes, and also I'm going to be probably putting my Paint Storm, my regular brushes, my actual regular just paint brushes, and any other paintbrush packs that I probably get, I'll probably end up putting on that. So in other words, well, obviously you won't get them unless you sign up again if the brushes aren't already there. But if I come out with a new brush pack, I announce stuff like that on the newsletter. So. But I won't announce that on Facebook or on YouTube and stuff like that. But that's a good place to announce on the newsletter. So if you want to, if I come up with a new brush pack, that's another good reason to sign up to the newsletter. That's where I mentioned that. And if I come up with a new course, I'm actually working on my new course now, the fundamentals of drawing. This goes into like not the fundamentals of painting, it's the fundamentals of drawing, and you need that in order to be a good painter, in order to be a good anything. It teaches you form and light and shadow and structure and all the stuff you need to know how to do. It is the foundation of painting. Without it, it's the foundation of drawing. It's the foundation of ink. Foundation of anything that has to do with drawing or painting. It's absolutely just vital to understand. And a lot of artists don't know a lot of the fundamentals because they never really learned them. They just kind of copy and learn that way, and they've gotten pretty good. But if they bring in those fundamentals, it'll make their game so much better. It'll like boom, it'll skyrocket them big time to a whole new level. But anyway, yeah. So when I come out with new courses, the people on my newsletter, they get the best discount and they get it first before anybody else. And also previous students of mine get the same privilege because it goes out to them as well, to my Udemy students. But yeah, so that's another reason to sign up for the newsletter, is to stay up to date. And then also just, so you don't forget about me, when I come out with a cool lesson, I'll go ahead and post it to the newsletter. Again, I don't post every video to the newsletter. It's like, you'll be lucky to get a newsletter once a month, but you might forget about me and then because you sign up to the newsletter, just go to the link in the description. Just check out the description, click on that link, masterpaintnow.com. At the top there, you'll see newsletter. Boom, click on that, enter your email, you're done. And then you'll get an email, and then you're signed up to the newsletter, and in that email you'll get the links to the brushes, which are free. By the way, I can easily sell these brushes for $20, no problem, all day long. They are phenomenal brushes. It is one of the most fun experiences I've ever had painting digitally, is being able to use these brushes and like paint like Bob Ross. It's awesome. Yeah, I absolutely love it. So I've always wanted to be able to do that digitally, and now I can. But anyway, so yeah, that's another reason. So all right, guys, and when I say guys, I mean everybody, male, female. I don't know if there's really what's a better word for that. I'm not gonna. Bye, humans. Anyways, all right, thanks for watching.